Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Miles Hannick Show for July 20th, 2026. It's been 3 days since I last joined you all, but that's for good reason. There hasn't been much going on, but I've kind of let the news build up over these past 3 days, and now we actually have some substance. So I'll just jump into it what we always do on the gridiron with football. Leading our topics, former Penn State quarterback Bo Pribola, obviously, who spent his last season at Missouri. It was announced that he will be quarterback one for the Virginia Cavaliers. So great stuff for him, and obviously looking forward to see what he could do. He beat out Pittsburgh transfer Eli Holstein, who honestly I had a little bit of a higher ceiling on, and almost thought that he could try to beat Bo for this job, but ultimately he did not. We'll see if this holds firm. I think it probably will. Obviously, Bo looked a little bit out of his depth with Missouri last year. He had Ahmad Hardy, who was one of the most dynamic rushers, and I don't know. I just feel like there was a lot to be desired at times, and you've seen backups almost play at an even better level. But obviously, he had some time limited off the field, so we'll see how he bounces back. I'm expecting a much more formidable season in the ACC. Maybe we could see him head off to the NFL. But jumping into it, we also have some more recruiting news. Three-star St. John's College rusher Jafia Rusin out of Bethesda, Maryland, class of 2028. Justin Rowland, Kentucky On3 insider, announced that this rusher, spent 2 days in Lexington, sorry, this summer. It also was announced as part of that same article that he will be planning to be back in Happy Valley this fall. So I'm really excited to see what potentially comes with this. Obviously, the Nittany Lions need a rusher for that depth. They lost Aiden Gibson. Probably okay with that because he was coming to school a little bit sooner than you anticipated, and you didn't really need him now. So getting a guy maybe on your timeline like Rusin is really important. And he had 1,000 plus yards last season with 12 touchdowns. So he improved his production by, I think it was like 700 yards between his freshman and sophomore seasons in high school. So I think there's really a high ceiling. And even though he has that 3-star now, I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State really makes a name in this recruiting that down the line, he's someone that they're really optimistic and happy that they got in early for because he really could improve beyond that label now. So we'll see where that goes, but he's not the only class of 2028 that we saw some development. Asa Birch, 4-star rusher out of Harding High School in Warren, Ohio, which might sound familiar. That's where Chaz Coleman also came out of, a former Penn State rusher there who dealt with his own problems with Tennessee. There was some brief comments in that, but I decided not to include it. But we'll skip past that. His father, Alfie Birch, who also played for Michigan in the early 90s as a wide receiver and defensive back, he went on Twitter July 18th and said that Asa really likes Penn State coach Terry Smith and Coach Campbell, and that they will be a priority in his recruiting. So I'm really excited to see this. Obviously, I've wrote a few blogs that I think that's something where Penn State really needs to build in the recruitment is the offensive line, or not offensive line, outside lineback unit and just edge rushers in general. So I think Birch is someone who has that ceiling, and we've obviously seen Warren can produce those guys like Coleman. So I would not be surprised if this is a name to watch out on. Obviously, with those ties to Michigan, I think it would be some stiff competition there, but we'll see. That obviously wraps up all we have in the recruiting. There wasn't much that happened, no news, no visits, no really anything special besides those two topics. Switching gears a little bit more bleak. Former receiver Julian Fleming was sentenced, or he began his jail sentence for his fatal ATV crash in 2025. Sentenced to 9 to 23 months, and he's eligible for work release. So, just obviously a bad situation. His journey took a lot of turns. But obviously, just he made a mistake, and we're going to hope for the best for him going forward. Ultimately, it's not something that you want to see someone, especially so young, into their life. But we'll see if we hear much from him going forward. I expect that he'll learn from this experience. But in other news, the most important thing out of Penn State probably throughout this day was July 20th. Today, the schedule for women's soccer was officially released, and I wrote this update again for the Collegian. I was a little bit disappointed with where the schedule placed. I think the non-conference schedule looks good, and a lot of the orders, the road trips, I'm happy with, especially the opener at Notre Dame. But I don't know, just to have your opener away in South Bend and then also your Big Ten opener also not at home, it just kind of sucks with all the renovations that are going to Jeffrey Field. I just would have liked, to maybe see something better. I mean, they even have to play Washington, who was extremely great in Big Ten play, not just in the regular season, but also in the tournament play. They're going to have to play them away from home. So I think you could have maybe gotten or hoped for a better draw there, especially with all of that money you put in, but that'll happen down the line. And you obviously isn't just all about the women's team, that is also the men's team's home. So I think it's a good schedule, and I'm expecting a better season from them. We talked about some of their additions last few episodes, so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement, but if there's anyone that can do it, it's Coach Don Bach. So I have a lot of hope. But moving on, baseball, getting back to the recruiting trail, they announced they got transfer pitcher Luke Calveric. This was announced on the 18th as well. He comes from William and Mary. And honestly, there's a lot to be desired with the numbers. He is 6'6", a righty, so there's obviously the frame there that you can maybe hope to put in the pitching lab and get some things figured out. But obviously, that's kind of a weird approach, and especially if you're the weird or the worst, Big Ten team from the rubber, just trying to develop that with someone who hasn't necessarily been proven at a lower level in the Big Ten is just going to be quite a massive jump, and I'm a little bit skeptical. He had 11 ERA up from his 5.5 in 2024. Didn't pitch at all in 2025. Appeared primarily as a reliever in 2024 and started a lot in 2026. He only has three pitches, a four seam, a splitter, and a slider. That four seam tops out at 96. I expect that to probably rise with that frame, but I imagine with that background and especially those three pitches that he won't probably be a starter unless maybe given a spot day. So we'll see. I'm expecting to see, we compared Weber Sync a few episodes for football as a commit who they can mold, and I see a lot of this with Calveric. Obviously, it's something different. I've written about Coach Mike Gambino, and I'm a lot of optimism toward that program, despite the bad season they've had. Uh, and this one's going to be really telling of just how good of coaching they are because they got to see something here that it just goes beyond what anybody else can because I'm not really seeing it. But we'll see. I think there'll be a little bit of low pressure situations for him early, and they obviously needed the bullpen help. So with all the transfer losses and just turnover they've had, it's just hard not to see that this isn't a guy that it says at least going to be a depth move. So we'll see what we expect from him. I'm not thinking maybe over a 4 or 5 ERA. That's what I'm going to put him on, but that's not the only addition. We saw women's hockey also added a 16-year-old recruit, Catherine McCool, which is an absolutely amazing name. Shout out to Kippy Hall for the lead on psucollegian.com. It was absolutely just besides the name, it's just I think it's a big pickup to get these younger players we talk about in a lot of sports, and it just seems like that's something Jeff Campersall really excels at as a coach. He needs to get this next generation of players in, especially after you've had 4-year starters like Tessa, like a lot of these players like Roberts that are going on to the PWHL and in between the pipes. But it seems like there's some answers there. It's good to get these younger players in and to start developing and get those ties. Obviously, we won't see much of her yet or anything, but it's just something to keep on your radar. See how her development really just breaks out. She had 41 goals and 25 assists with Team USA, and she comes out of Boston. So obviously, she plays in a pretty competitive market. So uh, I feel like this can be one that we can maybe see down the line could really be a mainstay for the program. But obviously, there's not much to say of it yet. There's a lot to see from her down the line. Other than that, that caps our episode. We have a few bonus topics. There was more Adidas gear that was released from social media. I know I was a little bit harsh on the original designs that we saw, but despite there being some questionable Nittany Lion logos, I'm a little bit more happy with what I've seen. The designs are a little bit more resemble what we've seen before, and I'm a big fan of this new font that they're seeming to use a lot of. We saw Abdul Carter wear the varsity jacket. If you have seen that picture, you'll know the font specifically what I'm talking about. But other than that, I know I complained about not necessarily having that specific stroke or touch to it, but it seems like Adidas is kind of starting to change that, and there's a lot to be desired. It's still a very limited drop, but I think it's at least going in the right direction. I can comfortably say, but that's going to be something that's going to be hard to convince this fandom because I've seen a lot of dialogue that is just not happy what they've seen early. But other than that, our last topic is going to be not really sporting related. The president will be getting a raise for the next calendar year after tuition will also increase. So even though it's not really sporting related, budgets and stuff like that does have implication despite them being two separate resources. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the backlash of that one. Personally, we'll see. That's all I can say about it. But it was a great episode. A little bit more flubs. Maybe I'm a little rusty of not coming online here for 3 days, but that's all me. I'm gonna be motivated to just do it more. But got some good news out there. We'll see how these future batch of prospects really just pan out. And signing off for July 20th, I'm Miles Hannick.